The damage from Cyclone Nargis was quickly apparent. Some 140,000 people were dead or missing. Hundreds of thousands were homeless, and thousands of homes, schools, businesses, and farms were destroyed.
Thousands are living on the streets, and local hospitals are overwhelmed. Food and water is running out too.
Earthquake demolished an entire wing where nearly 200 monks were writing an exam. Rescuers are using drastic means to get to whomever might still be alive.
At Insight Myanmar, we strive to highlight the resilience and struggles of the Burmese people as they navigate extraordinary challenges in their fight for justice and freedom. Through their stories, we witness acts of courage and determination, but also the complexities, hardships, and uncertainties that come with such a monumental struggle. Our role is not to romanticize or idealize, but to amplify authentic voices, foster understanding, and create space for deeper reflection. The people of Myanmar lead their own fight for dignity and human rights, and we stand alongside them in solidarity, sharing their experiences and perspectives with the world. Mie Mie Winn Byrd, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Insight Myanmar podcast.
Thank you for having me. Aloha.
So we are continuing our emergency coverage of the wake of the horrific 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck the Mandalay, Sagaing area. And we're talking with a range of different people, getting different perspectives on the many facets of this crisis. And the reason why we wanted to talk to you is because the last major horrific crisis that we saw in Myanmar was the 2008 Cyclone Nargis. And so I wonder if you can tell listeners that might not be familiar, what was Cyclone Nargis? What was the devastation caused? And where were you and how were you involved with what developed after the cyclone hit?
Yeah. So Cyclone was in 2008, and I believe it was May, and it's a, just cyclone that hits the delta area of Myanmar, so very southern, the southern part of Myanmar, and it had a death of about 125,000 people, and about 2.5 million were displaced and damaged. So that was the cyclone back in 2008. And my role was when U.S. Under President Bush offer an assistance to for relief because the whole the Delta area, Irrawaddy Delta area of Myanmar was completely underwater. We had a lot of assets. We have a lot of helicopters, that can move aid. And also we had an exercise in the nearby. We were doing Cobra Gold at the time, so we had a lot of air assets that are in that area. So we as in the United States offer to help. And I was in uniform at the time. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel, U.S. Army, and because of my expertise or my specialty in Myanmar, the task force was called Operation Caring Response, and I was asked to come and help. and I was an advisor to the task force that was planning the relief, and I was also an advisor to Lieutenant General Goodman, John Goodman at the time, the head of the task force. So, and my we were trying to uh, negotiate for access into the country at the time, and they allowed at that moment they allowed five five flights, C-130, five flights per day, and but we weren't allowed to deliver anywhere but Yangon. So we had to leave everything in the Yangon airport tarmac, and we did it for like 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks, they still after several um, negotiations, they still won't allow us to deliver those to the affected areas. And then at that moment, we get a lot of reports from the ground saying that all these aid, material that we left, supplies were disappearing. It was not in the hand of the victims either. So after 2 weeks, President Bush called and said, we're not going to go in if we're not force our way in if they were not allowing. So we have to we pulled out. So that was my experience. So I personally went in on the C-130s and with General Goodman, and I was a part of the negotiation. Yeah, unsuccessful negotiation, and it was
Mm.
heartbreaking.
I imagine it was that anyone that was around for 2008 Cyclone Nargis, I was in Yangon when it hit. It was
Mm.
absolutely devastating, and it's something that no one will forget. And I think that people living through today, no one will forget as well. There's a lot of questions to unpack about your firsthand experience of trying to deliver aid into Myanmar after the cyclone hit as part of the U.S. forces. In the story that you gave, you towards the end, you said that President Bush had made the decision that if the supplies are disappearing and not going where they're supposed to, and if the military is continuing not to allow relief missions to go to those that, let's be frank, are in the process of dying, that the U.S. forces would not force their way in. Are you aware if there was any consideration of even entertaining that as an option?
Well, there were call for R2P. I don't think I think you may remember, like
Hmm.
France and UK, they were talking about R2P and be able to force entry into Myanmar. But on the U.S. side, it was not a consideration. It was not a consideration at that moment.
So without the U.S. supporting that, I suppose it fell through. Do you know anything about the calculus or the rationale of what was being considered, or was it a non-starter to begin with?
Well, because AHA Center came in, and also the neighboring countries in ASEAN didn't really want that forced entry. They think
Sure.
that at AHA Center said they can deliver it. They can work through the military. So then we just let them work that through. At that time, we don't really want to anger any of the neighboring countries. We always back then we our whole strategy under President Bush is working with through our partners.
Hmm.
So ASEAN countries were in Thailand. We were basing out of Thailand. We're flying out of Utapao into Myanmar. So we really don't want to also anger our allies and friends at that moment.
Right. So it was based more on the relations and intentions of ASEAN and the AHA Center. And as I recall it, the feelings, the one of the reasons that the military was said to be so reticent to accepting American assistance. One was the fear of invasion, that this was they're always afraid of just a U.S. invasion. Let us not forget, this is not so long after Iraq. And two, that it was just simply embarrassing that it would show that you had a foreign country from halfway across the world that was aiding and providing for people that were suffering when the military wasn't doing anything. It would just kind of expose their inability or their incapability or disinterest in that. Is what was your understanding as to anything we might glean from the military side of that?
Well, it's hard to see what they're thinking, but what I can tell you is what I observed, right? So our first negotiation with General Mie, who is now the vice president or acting president now, he was the commander for the that the Yangon region. So we went and General Goodman went and negotiated with him. In the first meeting, he was so shaking. He was shaking so hard uh, because he was just afraid of one. General Goodman is a very imposing figure. He used to play football for the I think New Orleans Saints. So he's a very big person, very tall person, and Misway is short, and he was just shaking, and you can visibly see his hands are shaking. So the fact that they were afraid of American, invasion, it could
Mm,
be, based on that observation. And then also, we keep on trying to calm him by saying, I even personally said, we're just doing it out of our generosity. We don't have any other ulterior motive. This is something we do for everything, for countries in need. And he keep on saying like, oh, we got it, we have it everything under control. And we knew it was not under control because we're getting a lot of report from inside, and the from inside the country, as well as we flew over that area, and we saw the whole area was underwater. It was all brown, right? It's no longer, we couldn't see the land anymore. So we knew you would need a lot of air assets to be rescuing people and also delivering aid, because the roads are underwater, right? Um, he keep on saying we got it under control, and he gave me like he gave us like really weird story of how they're gonna build this wall at the along the Ayawari Delta to keep the seawater out. And we're like looking at each other going like, it
mm,
makes sense. But
mm.
yeah.
Gosh, I remember that time. Being in Yangon, my apartment was destroyed. It was probably one of the closest near death experiences I had, and that was Yangon. I remember after learning what had happened, that Yangon had just had some of the residual effects. I remember at the time thinking, I can't even begin to imagine how massive this would have been in the Delta. I mean, this was just in real time as it was happening and trying to figure out the facts on the ground, which was difficult. And then as we started to learn more, it was just heart wrenching because, and I'm sure it was like that for you too, parked off in the sea. I was where being in Yangon, there were streams of people trying um to get out through the delta and getting stopped by roadblocks, getting arrested, getting their goods taken, having seen the US aid items on the black market. And it was just this feeling of absolute exasperation that you had these people that were barely surviving, and every hour and every day was critical, and that the only thing the military was doing was actively stopping people from providing it. And it's hard to put that feeling of just anger and frustration. I mean, there's no words to describe what that feels like, and I guess we're seeing something like that now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally, I was the caring response task force was primarily Marines, and I was the U.S. Marines, and General Goodman is a Marine general, so I was attached as a U.S. Army lieutenant colonel to a Marine outfit. And I was pushing pretty hard to try to renegotiate, right? But then and then I'm seeing all these news coming in saying like people are out there looking for American ship. They said they hurt them and they were waiting for them to come. They're just they're just needing some help, right? And when President Bush called that morning and said pull back, and I just couldn't compose myself. I broke down in front of all the Marines, and
Hmm.
so I had to run into the bathroom and just just cried and cried and cried because, I just knew we had all the capability to help them, right? To relieve suffering and provide aid. But there was nothing I can do. And it was just so heartbreaking for me at that moment. Yeah. So that's why I couldn't. I mean, every time I talk about it too, I always get very emotional because it was just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like you said, heart wrenching. And
Yeah. Me too.
I can't be breaking down in front of the Marines, the Marines will think I'm being an army. They would give me a hard time about that. So I had to run into the bathroom and I had a good cry. Yeah. And I called my husband from there and I said, like, the president just called it off and, people are waiting for us. They need our help. There's nothing, I feel so helpless. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. You're bringing back memories, and
Hmm.
um, you know, you mentioned breaking down in that moment in a place and with a group that one is not supposed to break down in your in your career. Did you ever have any other situation where emotions came on that strong?
No, no, no. That's why that is such a memorable moment.
Yeah.
And every time I revisit it, it's always been heartbreaking and very emotional for me. Yeah. And now, like you said, we're seeing that again here.
Mm. Um, to ask maybe somewhat of a stupid question, but to just ask it because we do have people that are tuning in that are not so familiar with the context and history of Myanmar politics and military. When you describe this to people that are hearing the first time, one of the first questions you just get is, why do they care so little about the people? Why are they just willing to let them die? Why are they so cruel? Why are they so cruel to not just not help, but to actually put up roadblocks arresting the relief workers that come? And we're seeing even worse than that now because they're conscripting young men and doctors that are trying to save lives in the Mandalay Sagaing region after the earthquake. I'm sure you must have gotten this question many times, and people trying to understand Burma. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that it has to do with their training from the very beginning. They disconnect the military away from the population. Once the moment you went into the military, there's a two different world. There's a normal people live, and then there's a military in their own world, and they do that on purpose too, so that you won't have empathy for the people, so they no longer have that, and then it just reinforce and reinforce, and they become monsters rather than have any type of human empathy, and giving that it's the you know Buddhism. They all claim to be the protector or guardians of
Mm,
the Buddhism in Myanmar, but they don't. They do not. I mean, they violate. Not only they don't live up to it, but they violate all the tenets of Buddha's teaching, right? So, yeah, I think it has to do with they are groomed from the very beginning to not have connection to uh, the population, and they lord over the population. They are the military is the provider, the guardian, the parent, instead of the other way around. The military is there to serve and protect the people. They don't have that principle, that idea. So, and also, many times the people that ended up in the top they're very selfish. They're all about themselves and they're a small group of people. So I mean, especially right now, and that's one of the reason I don't call me online, by rank, because that he does not deserve
mm,
the military rank, and because the military, Myanmar military, is no longer a professional military, is an organized crime, criminal, a militant organization, and they behave like one, right? So people keep on, calling them or thinking that they are. If you're dealing with this military in Myanmar, you're dealing with organized criminal gang.
exactly. And yeah, this is not a government. That is not a word that should be used. And I appreciate what you're suggesting. They're not even a military. They're an organized crime syndicate. They're a mafia organization. Yeah.
That's right. And they behave like it, right? They
Hmm.
behave like that. It's not, this is not a what professional military organization would do. They're there to service the people, to protect the people, and especially in the time of need. And they're bombing. They're using their air assets to deliver bombs rather than to deliver aid, right? So it just you know inhumane. And I mean, people are asking, are they even human at all?
Yeah, right. And so it's really interesting because when Nargis happened and you were in the room with some of these top generals negotiating, you're not a stranger to the psychological makeup of these military men, and so that gives you an enormous advantage in the discussions and in advising the how to proceed at the top levels in talking. I wonder if you suggested or if how things played out, if it was an aggressive stance or appeal to their better sides, reassuring or negotiation, or what was the mindset in trying to find a way to provide aid, knowing the psychological makeup.
Yeah, we were just trying to uh, 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 ease them, the fears, right? Because you can see he was visibly fearful. So we were just trying to say, no, we're here to help. We're here to help. And also, the fight flights that we're flying in at the beginning, we knew that majority of are not going to go to the people, but we were just doing it to build trust with them. So you know, for example, initially they had a call sign coming into to deliver these aid. The call sign for the flights, for the planes. They
Hmm.
call Dragon One, Dragon Two, Dragon Three. I told them,
Hmm.
don't use Dragon. It's very
Hmm.
aggressive animal, so change it. So we ended up changing it to like very neutral, Sumo One, Sumo Two, Sumo Three. Yeah. So something like that, but the guys just didn't know any better. That was just their call sign, so they were using that. But we did everything we could. But you know, in a but like I said, whatever we did, they weren't going to. They're not going to open up. So I would say it doesn't matter how much I know their psychology.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't. Their psychology is that they don't really care about the people. They don't really care about the people. They have no, uh, yeah, and you can see that there was a video that shows up. One of the general officer went down to the Delta area to review, and people were like asking him to help, and he's like, "Stop asking for help." He was very rough with them, and these are
Hmm.
victims, and that tells you everything that you need to know about how much they care about the people.
Well, I think it was Tan Shui that said, "Let them eat frogs. Let them survive with frogs."
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what he said too. Yeah.
Mm, right, and so that's it's profound. It's devastating. This sense that at the end of the day, they care so little about the people and see them as something so exploitative that there's no appeal you can make on any grounds that's going to get anywhere because there's nothing to negotiate or assure or to find your way in, find common ground because at the end of the day, you're on your side, you're caring about the suffering people that you just want to provide aid to, and they simply are not.
Yeah. So right now, there are a lot of uh, there are other people that could help each other. The neighbors could help each other, and they're putting stop to it. And there
Yeah.
was this morning, I hear this woman from Kamboza Bank, right? When Kamboza Bank collapsed, there are other people were trying to help, and they say you can't go in there. And meanwhile, people are screaming inside. And then, like you said earlier, people, if even those helpers come in, they try to abduct them and conscript forcefully conscript them. So and I was talking to Dr. Wimia A, who is leading the NUG response side, and he was also, the same role when he was under Daw San Suu Kyi, and then he went CDM, right? So he was saying that within 3 hours, NUG was able to call, do a meeting of everybody that's available, all the community leaders, and then they were able to quickly put out the guidance for those. And he said that he has about 150 people in the call, and they got them moving. And what they had to also do was that some of their designated responder they were also victims, so then they have to quickly shift to just enabling and empowering whoever is left, right?
Mhm.
So they had to do that. And then NUG also, I think, put allocated $1 million right away. And NUG operate on a shoestring budget, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up to show that what a government that is that has the empathy and care about the people would do, even with the shoestring versus
Right.
military.
Right.
According to Dr. Wimia, he said that they had like 400 billion jets put aside for something like this, right? Because
Uh-huh.
under Daw San Suu Kyi, they all knew that this was possible. This was going to happen. It just went. So, they put aside 400 billion reserve, and then they bought the helicopters for search and rescue, and she started sending he started sending also a lot of responders overseas to learn about how to do response in this level of catastrophe. So if they had continued, they would have been in a much better position. And but that's also that's what the government, that is capable government, right, true government do.
Mm.
uh, Myanmar took that 400 billion and then plundered it, right, to other things, and probably into his pockets and his cronies' pockets. And
Yeah.
then we don't know where that helicopter is. Probably that helicopter was used to drop the bomb
Yeah.
soon after the earthquake, So, I mean, I think that purchase of the helicopter was one of I think, the item that they have put Daw San Suu Kyi into arrest.
Wow. Oh, what irony.
Yeah, what an irony, right? So, but I just bring that up to show, like,
Mm.
even with the very little limited resources, the
Mhm.
government should do, and then like what the military has done so far.
And you saying that, it reminds me of in Cyclone Nargis how civic society responded in a very profound way that would go on to really change the trajectory of where Myanmar would go in the subsequent years. And I think that there's a through line between the way that civil society responded in some ways. Individuals and organizations that had never done anything like this before, because they just the suffering and the loss of life was so near them that people just picked up and did whatever they can, rented cars and bought rice and took boats, so many friends of mine doing things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and not considering themselves activists or political or concerned about democracy, just seeing that there was this need they had to meet and to support. And then from there, once those kind of networks and activity happened, then you started to have this even greater emerging civil society. And I think there's a very much a through line from that to, as you're talking about, the NUG even not having so little control, still having this foresight and this care to do what little is in their control to be able to help and play a role.
Yeah. And so they said they've been able to reach about 70% of the rural area. Granted, the rural area, they are affected, but because they're not densely populated, right? And then they don't
Mhm.
have high rises. So the death and destruction was a lot less. And then out of all that, PDFs were not affected at all because they were not living in buildings. So the
Mhm.
PDFs jump into the to help, and then the NUG gave guidance to those that are able to provide. So back to drawing on that civil society, right? Civil society capability and the willingness to help each other. So they really empower that and mobilize that. And like there has been report, like some people are having to use animals and elephants to pull stuff
Mhm.
away, right? Because they don't have anything. right? So ingenuity and then just wanting to help. So I think just like Cyclone Nargis in this particular is going to be the civil society, and that's why a diaspora, across the globe has been trying to
Hmm.
say is if you really want the aid to reach the victim. Please help those that are helping on the ground. Don't
Yeah.
go through the military
Yeah.
because if it goes through the military, it will be siphoned off, plundered, and then mostly right now, the majority of the relief that is coming from overseas is all in Naypyidaw, rebuilding their stuff, and not so much out to the area that really needed. Instead, they're bombing,
They're
in Sudan.
fortifying their bases and they're bombing and arresting those that are trying to help and are being active. I mean, even yesterday they fired at the Chinese Red Cross. I mean,
Yeah,
how
right, right.
idiotic and cruel do they have to be?
Yeah. So one area I think people don't talk about much is Bago. Bago area also got hit, and the
Mm,
Bago area is where his military industrial production complex is. So it's not surprising that they send the Russian down to that area for relief and you know uh, response. And but I've been told that I heard that those production factory got damaged a lot, and they were I think they were inoperable right now. So maybe that will give people a little bit of relief because after this inventory of existing inventory of bombs and bullets are gone, they may
mhm.
have a hard time replenish that unless China or Russia bring in the plane loads of it.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So, with this understanding of the military's playbook in mind, that as they did in Nargis, as they've done here, they see these natural disasters as a chaos they can reap advantage from. They look at how they can use this to their benefit. Again, not to the benefit of the country or even their people, but to their mafia organized crime syndicate. How can they take advantage of a terrible situation by making it worse and fortifying their position? So, with that in mind, the question I have is it's a two-part question. First, how do you see in their early response to this crisis? How do you see them playing that same strategy? What are they doing that's showing you their thinking of how they're trying to take advantage in this way? And then the second part of the question is, what how can the international community respond in such a way that it doesn't fall into the trap that they always set for it?
Yeah. So the they not only they don't help, they have weaponized it, and then you saw that in during the cyclone Mocha last year.
Right.
And they on purpose they will open up the dam while people are sleeping to wipe
Jeez.
them out, right? So those villages that are hit in near Naypyidaw, they have not recovered from that that a flood. So, and in this particular case, they're going to use a lot of the aid coming in, especially food items. Even like latest thing, right? In a couple months ago, when AA raided their base, and in that warehouse was the food that has been stored for military was at the WFP on it. So they have
Mm,
absconded WFPC food aid and use it for military ration. So that's what they're going to do because they are starving and they are, in very bad shape. And second, the biggest thing is he wants legitimacy,
yeah.
right? And so this interaction and engagement with the international community, he's trying to bolster his legitimacy. So that's what he is trying to do, and then like that will help him with the, I guess, the election that is going to be coming up that he want to do. Yeah. So that's what he's trying to do, and for the international community response, and that's why we're saying, hey, go through the diaspora. Diaspora outside
Mm,
has really a lot of connection. As soon as the earthquake hit, I was getting reports already from
mm,
out. In this particular time, diaspora is very much involved and inside really depend on the diaspora help, right? So there's always going back and forth. So by helping and enabling and empowering and providing more resources to the diaspora, then they can find a way to get in there. But also, I wanted the international community to understand that there are two airports that are under the control of the opposition coalition, which is
Hmm.
one in Lasho, right? And one in Rakhine, Thandwe Airport. And Thandwe Airport is closer to Bago, and the Lasho Airport is closer to Zagain area. So, so if you know that, if you're able to have access to those airports, you don't need to go through Yangon, right?
Mm.
So that is an alternative that we did not have before in Cyclone Nargis.
Interesting. Have you heard any reports or plans of being able to make use of those resistance controlled airports?
No, that I don't know. I mean, if I think the ethnic groups. I mean, AA and MNDAA. I think you would have to work with them to find out
Sure.
whether or not those could take on these large airplanes, right?
So you're painting this picture where when you're looking at the military designs, they're trying to just have a complete win on all aspects of how they're controlling this crisis. Number one, they have legitimacy, or they're trying to get legitimacy through it. Number two, their stocks are completely decimated, and they're trying to have access to goods that they can give to their soldiers, which will make them more effective in killing and assaulting the population. And three, by having a natural disaster that strips the people of those resources and then preventing resources from getting them, they're destroying their morale, maybe destroying their lives along with that. They're suffocating them, as they've done for so many decades. And so this leaves the obvious question of, when you look at international aid coming through formal structures of the UN or ASEAN or AHASAN, or whatever we're talking about, the intent to want to help it, when you see the reality of what these goods are doing, it's so tragic to say, but one is almost left with this thought that doing nothing would be a greater net good than doing anything if it's the military channels that you're going through. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in a way, it is. It is. And I'm sorry to say that. But if they really want to help, they don't have to go through the military. There are many ways. So, for example, if uh, AHA wants to help, they have many diaspora living in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand that are helping into, trying to help aid, getting aid into the country. And they can just empower them, give them more resources. That will go a long way than them coming in and doing that through the military channels. Because we will be surprised if 10% gets to the actual
Yeah.
victims, right? So,
Yeah.
but what they may want legitimacy, but this incident is telling the people of Myanmar that military is incapable, and they are not they're losing even more legitimacy in the eye of the people. And I think
Sure.
to a degree too, I think that since they started bombing, I think international community also know that, right? So what's going to happen is we probably going to see a lot more joining the PDFs after this, because they may have lost everything and they're pissed. They're angry. They're angry, so they have nothing to lose, right? So I think that that's what. So every time they do this, people just get angrier and angrier, and they all know that as long as the military is there, this
Hmm.
military, not, of course countries need military, but they need professional military. They don't need
Yeah.
the criminal gang, right? As
Yeah.
long as this criminal gang is in Naypyidaw, they even though they don't think that it affects them, it will affect them like this, because Myanmar is a disaster prone area,
Mm.
that we're expecting, because more cyclone and more floods. And as long as those guys are there, people will suffer. So if they don't think that it affects them now, it will, well, we don't care what happened in Naypyidaw, we just have to live our own. Well, you can't. right? It affects, and I think this is demonstrating that. So people will be more likely to even, you know, angrier and wanting the military, this criminal gang out of Nebido.
Sure, and I appreciate your comments about the role that the diaspora has played. At the same time, there's something quite saddening about just the level of burden that's been placed on this diaspora community for 4+ years through disasters and conflicts and atrocities and everything else. And as resilient and generous and sacrificing as this community has been to keep finding a way to resist and to set up parallel organizations and civic society from afar. This is not, generally speaking, a well-off, wealthy diaspora that has a lot of funds to spare. It's a lot of sacrifices that have been made, and that leads us back to the international community's response. And you've made you and so many other guests on this platform and elsewhere have really made the strong argument that going through military channels will not only not reach those desired places, but it will actually be used to create greater harm than simply doing nothing. When the answer seems so clear to us in terms of those local networks and civil society and groups on the ground that have a proven track record of being able to help, the answer seems so clear that this is who to support, and yet the formal mechanisms and structures of the international community somehow it doesn't it's hard to work, it's hard to adjust to how the reality is. So what are your thoughts on the likelihood or what needs to happen in order to make that shift?
That's why a lot of the diaspora has been, lobbying their government to find a different way. Yes, military is utilizing weaponizing, international system, exploiting the international system to get its way. Even though, as only 21% is under its control, but it just happened to be the large population. And whereas the opposition has nearly 80% or nearly 40% under control, and another like 40% is under contest. So uh, uh, we just
Hmm.
the international system is such a hardened way. It's not that flexible. But if
Yeah.
they want it to be, I guess it has to do with the political will of the people that are in the international system. So, and then also Myanmar doesn't get that much airtime. Many of the policymakers are not aware. I mean, so many times they don't even know where Myanmar is, or Burma, or what is Burma. Myanmar is that the same
Yeah.
country, type of thing. So we have been, as a diaspora, we've been trying to get more international media to cover it. Right, that's the only way to get more information about Myanmar. And many times people will say, oh, Myanmar environment is so complex, we can't do anything. No, it is complex. Everywhere else is complex, but if you don't pay attention, you don't know where the opportunities are to for intervene. Right, and if you don't know, you're not paying attention. When you intervene, you might intervene in the wrong way. But number one, first part is understand it, pay attention to what's happening. So that's why, since the beginning of this earthquake, we are trying to get more diaspora and friends of the non-Burmese friends out there like you, making these type of programs to get the word out. And it was really wonderful. Tony Chan from Al Jazeera was luckily inside the country, and he was able to report what was happening. So it was really, really a shot in the arm for us. But also, as you said, diaspora is tired, is burdensome. But diaspora also, again, this is kind of like is rather putting another energy back into the diaspora. Actually, people are more motivated now to help. So, and
Yeah.
diaspora, I'm just so amazed at the diaspora. They have been really, this whole resistance is funded and assisted by the diaspora for 4 years. And then when the earthquake hit, they all rally again and they
Yeah.
open up their hearts, their purse,
Yeah.
and doing it again. So I'm just so amazed and admire the Myanmar diaspora. So Myanmar meaning like all ethnic group. And
Mm.
many diaspora, in last 4 years, they sold their houses, and they will use their money they're put aside for more down payment for a house. They will use it all to support the resistance. Is amazing. And women, I know some people, they work overtime on purpose, and they working
Mm.
the very basic job like cleaning and janitorial service, and they will work overtime, and all that overtime they will donate to them.
The generosity is extraordinary, and it's you're speaking about generosity of the diaspora to their country, but the generosity from to any outsider who's come and spent time in Burma, you can't but walk away from feeling a sense of generosity and human spirit we never knew really existed. And I just want to tell one anecdote that is somewhat removed from everything that we're saying. It's I think it's a very heartwarming anecdote, but it brings out this sense of generosity that you almost can't wrap your mind around.
Mhm.
So I had while I was living in Yangon, I had an American friend who came over, and it was his first visit there. And as he didn't know much about Buddhism, as I was talking about the monasteries and such, he was actually a digital nomad. Um, and so he was working from there. But when I told him that it was possible to ordain temporarily for whatever period of time you wanted and have the experience of being a renunciate and living by the monastic code, he was fascinated. So he put all of his digital nomad work down, all of his duties, and he went to a monastery to go find a place to ordain. He's very serious, even if it was just for a week. He really wanted to do it right and understand the code, to read up on the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, and do everything the right way. And as it happened, he ended up going. It was hot season, so I helped him get to a monastery in Townji where it was cool. It was a very remote monastery, so the problem was that it was basically just him and the Sayada that were living there. So, and why I say that was a problem was because he was trying to do everything the right way, and he didn't have a lot of examples to look around and to see how other people were how other monks were behaving, so he can just kind of follow in line. So, as you know, the way that one bathes in much of Myanmar is with a concrete water tank that is outside. You never take off all of your clothes, but you carefully find a way to wash your full body while having clothes on, and then changing also all in public without ever having showing much of the skin. Um, as as he was watching the Sayada do this and trying to copy, he of course was flummoxing everything and just didn't really know how to bathe himself. And so very politely he went to the Sayada and he said, he asked for tips and guidelines of how he was to bathe in this manner because he wasn't accustomed to it. And the Sayada said, "Oh, that's right. You're from the U.S. You don't have kind of bathing like this. Okay, let me think about it." The next morning, he was awoken by all of the sound outside of where he was sleeping, and he saw they were building something, and he went to the Seda and asked what they were doing, and he said, "Well, we realized that you don't know how to take baths in the way that our Myanmar people do, so we've built you a bathroom so that you can so for your 1 week stay as a monk, you can feel comfortable bathing in the way that you're accustomed to." And I mean, this moment changed this guy's life. He said that never in his experience had he imagined this kind of generosity occurring in the world. And then after his week was done, the Sayyidah, and I'm getting even goosebumps sharing this because it's just such a beautiful story. The Sayyidah said to him, anytime you want to come, the kuti you stayed is yours, the bathhouse is yours. If you want to stay a month, hey, if you want to stay the rest of your life, we'll take care of you. And I can't tell you how many friends I've had and how much that's happened to myself. This is more of a Buddhist example, monastic example, but I think it pervades all the different regions that one finds oneself in. This sense that we will provide for you. We don't have much, but what you need, you'll get the best, and we'll take care of you. And so I think that that's Myanmar is really a land of contrasts and extremes because you find that extreme generosity we're touching upon now, and then we find the extreme, almost baffling, animalistic cruelty of the crime syndicate that you talked about before. They're somehow coexisting this struggle, but I think this generosity that's bringing the diaspora to keep giving and doing more to bring Myanmar through, and I think also those like me that are not from Myanmar, but that have been a recipient of this extraordinary generosity, feeling well, feeling brought into that world, and looking at how can we. Uh, how can we take this as our time to reflect, humbly on what we've been given, and see what we can do back at this moment? And so, yeah, just some reflections on generosity there.
Yeah, well, the world from time to time I see uh, the the report on the most generous nation, and we Myanmar tied with U.S. and
Yeah, yeah,
shared the
yeah.
top spot for a couple of years, and Myanmar is at the bottom of the index, the income per capita versus U.S. is on the very top, so they match, and you're absolutely right. They Most of the time they're very generous and they're very understanding, and that's, I think, the military has
Mm-hmm.
that's why they were able to do exploit and take advantage of the people's good nature. And another story of one of my friend in Inlay area. Inlay is most of the time, a lot of the foreigner goes to visit, and her father started this restaurant not because to sell food, but he started seeing all these foreigner coming by, and he said, "Oh, are you hungry?" If they're hungry and then they wanted to taste Burmese food, he said, "Oh, come on in," and he will invite into his house and
Wow.
feed them. Like these
Mm.
stranger from like that looked totally different, and then it ended up being a restaurant, and a restaurant is still
Mm.
nonprofit. I mean, they don't ask for there was no price to the menu, but if you want to donate at the end of after your meal, you can donate, and then she continue and she uses the money to fund like local schools and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the generosity of Burmese people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you reference how there's one of the challenges to breaking out of this conformity of this international order that comes to benefit the military is political will. Political will is what's needed to be able to shift that needle, and that's what's been so hard. And so there needs to be this narrative that goes outside the diaspora to reach the hearts and minds of others that are going to put pressure to demand that change. And right now we have a very narrow winding. I would say tragically it's already starting to close.
Well, when the coup occurred, Myanmar, everybody said it can't be done. The Myanmar military is too big to fail. They have too much firepower, because on the opposition side they just have a handmade, the muskets, right? They started it, but the thing was the Myanmar people has that resolve. They want they want to be free. They want to be free from
Yeah,
the under the military boots. And this time around, 10 years of transition has forever transformed their skill set as well as their mindset. So with that odds, they started to push back to the military, and now is military with all their mighty firepower. They're on the run, and that's why they're having to use the international system to to oppress, to hang on to their power. So and all that, the resistance and pushback to the military has been all is bootstrapped. It's all by the Myanmar people and Myanmar diaspora. Really, very little help funding come from the international
yeah.
governments and organizations. So, you know, just if we can just give that little bit extra, help to the people of Myanmar, they can get. The thing was, if they were left alone, just military and the resistance, they would have beaten them already. It's just that China came in and put the whole thing behind military, and also Russia. So two major power is propping up the military. Meanwhile, the people are on their own doing this, right? But it doesn't matter though. However, assistance that China give military, as long as people do not accept military, They cannot. And plus, on top of it, military is corrupt. Like I said, it's not a professional military. The reason they're also losing is not only the people, resistance, ingenuity and commitment, but it's all they are so corrupt. They're collapsing on their own corruption, because their own people don't even like the leadership. So that's why we saw a lot of defection from the military, and then they have lost the will to fight, and that's why he has to abduct people, to conscript. So knowing all that, they're so close to the end state. They're so close because 80% of, like I said, only 20% of the country is under the military control. And then everybody else control others. And then 40% is under contest where they're losing every day. And that's why they can't even stop bombing if they because they only have the air asset left. Every time on the ground, every fight, military loses. So, anyways, I just wanted to say is that I'm my admiration for the Myanmar people and Myanmar diaspora commitment. And if the international community could just help them a little bit, I think that we can get to the end state.
What form of help would you think would be most effective to achieve that just little bit of push over the edge?
So, humanitarian assistance, right, for the people that are like 3.5 displaced, as well as communication. The reliable communication, reliable and secure communication. Myanmar diaspora has been able to push in a lot of Starlink into the country, but Starlink is really, really becoming very expensive. So it started out with $250 per month. It's now like double. So it's really difficult. So if they don't want to provide any type of lethal assistance, something like communication equipment and just the humanitarian assistance for those that are displaced would be very, very helpful.
Another thing in thinking about the international response, of course, the closest country geographically, culturally, in other ways is Thailand. There's a lot that has been said about Thai Burmese relations. And so, as you look at Thai policy towards Burma and the way that the Burmese military looks towards Thailand, what are thoughts to come to mind, especially during this crisis?
Hmm. Yeah, Thailand. Anytime the Myanmar, is unstable, something happened inside Myanmar. Thailand always get the brunt of it. People run into that, and all the time, not many times, all the time. The problem is the military created it, right? And then it's funny that military always look down on Thai military because a long time ago, they invaded Thailand and sacked Ayutthaya, right? So they, even to today, unfounded, they always look down on Thailand and they think that anytime they want to invade Thailand, they could. That's how they have in their mindset, and it's been reinforced in their training as well. So, but Thailand is a very Thai military. Thai military is a very professional military, unlike theirs. But nevertheless, though, they always look down on Thai military as a little brother. They can always beat them anytime they want to, is what their mindset is. But Thailand gets the brunt of the Myanmar instability, and all these instability are always caused by the Myanmar military.
That's really shocking to hear for several reasons. I mean, one is that we hear about these strong military to military ties that the Thai military is has been sympathetic towards the regime, and I think it's somewhat ironic to think that the the ways they may have supported the Burmese military regime, that they're being looked down on as a little brother that could be taken advantage of or run over anytime that they think. I mean, you look at the different capabilities. I don't know how that would actually stand up. But do you have any sense that the Thai counterparts are aware of the way that they're being looked at?
I'm not sure, but they have used Thailand, right? But Thai former foreign minister went in and then used up all their, reputation, and then Myanmar military didn't live up to anything they have agreed to, right? So, and then Thai looks like in front of the international community, uh, uh, they lost their face. And same thing. Every time Thai will do for Myanmar military, they are just using Thailand. And in fact, Thai reputation could be tarnished by dealing with the military. Like right now, Tech, right? They have, Mainline is using them to, make himself bolster its legitimacy. But whatever the agreement they get, they're not going to live on it. They don't think they have to live on it because Thai will just go along anyways because they're just their little brother, right? So, maybe in the front they will be very nice to them, and Myanmar people are very affable and very charming. But in the back, they really don't have any respect for Thai military.
That's just unbelievable to hear. I've never heard that side of it, and especially in Asia where face is so important, and in Thailand certainly face is so important, and not being shown up or embarrassed or ashamed or something. And this just seems like a very embarrassing loss of face that frankly is kind of surprising that the Thai military would tolerate or would would not know about. But if this is how the Burmese military leaders are speaking in private, that's something certainly to get out there and to be known.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just want to caution Thai military do not let yourself be used by the Myanmar military leaders because they will do that. Yeah, I mean, we just need more. We need to go beyond the Myanmar diaspora to the international community, and then we need to find out. We would like the international media to really cover regularly of what's happening in Myanmar, and because it is really Myanmar is a very critically important country in Indo-Pacific region. Myanmar is where South Asia, Southeast Asia, and China meet, and is a very strategic location. And so Myanmar stability means the regional stability. If Myanmar is not stable, then we know all kinds of bad things are happening with the trafficking and scam centers. So really, I think it's worth it to pay attention, and Myanmar freedom and Myanmar democracy will be the best thing for bringing stability to Myanmar as well as to the region.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Insight Myanmar podcast. We hope you liked what you heard today. And if so, you might be interested to know that over the years, we've built an extensive archive that now numbers in the hundreds of episodes, all of which are freely available to anyone who wants to listen. Our latest estimate is that it contains over 360 hours of interesting, thought-provoking, and even inspiring content. That's 15 days of continuous listening for those willing to forego sleep. In other words, there's a lot there. These past interviews capture the stories, struggles, and triumphs of Myanmar's people, along with the insights of foreign allies and observers who've played a role in navigating these critical moments. There are also more than a few discussions covering spiritual journeys thrown in as well. Together, our archive forms a rich tapestry of perspectives, documenting pivotal points in the country's history and offering a deeper understanding of its complexities. However, producing episodes and maintaining this archive takes a significant investment of time and resources, and we rely on the support of listeners like you to keep it accessible. If you found value in what we offer, whether through today's episode or a deep dive into our past discussions, we invite you to help sustain this work. Your contribution allows us to maintain and continue expanding this archive, as well as producing new episodes free of charge. Consider making a donation at insightmyanmar.org/donation.
Potaba Yarananga Unyana, Dadu Yadana Gadamana, we got a Besayana, Besayo. Oba Yarananda, Dayananga, Yaranaya, Diana, Potaba, Yaranamano.